They say never mess with someone who quietly signs your paycheck, but HOA Karen didn't get the memo because the day she tried to gift my private ranch lake to her lazy son as a surprise graduation present was the day she unknowingly declared war on the man who controls the entire HOA budget. She sent the cops to intimidate me, but froze when I showed them the signed HOA checks with my name at the bottom because Karen had no idea that the man she'd just humiliated in front of the entire board was the same man who pays for her precious neighborhood amenities, and within days her world began to crumble as the lake she gave away dried up. Her son's car was mysteriously booted her backyard, parties got noise complaints, and soon every dollar she once used to control the community vanished, and the worst part, I did it all legally because when Karen messed with my land, she forgot one thing: never bite the hand that funds your kingdomy. Bought my ranch 15 years ago, a beautiful stretch of land with a clear lake tucked behind the hills, perfect for fishing, swimming, and early morning peace. I built a small dock, planted trees around it, and even set up benches for quiet nights under the stars. I never imagined that peace would be threatened by someone like Karen. She moved into the HO 3 years ago, loud, nosy, and always complaining about everything from the color of my barn to the way I trimmed my hedges. She wasn't even on the board at first, just a bitter neighbor who thought she owned the place, but eventually she worked her way into the HOA by sweet-talking the right people, throwing fake barbecues, and making ridiculous promises. She got elected, and suddenly she thought she ran the entire community. I mostly stayed out of HOA politics since my ranch was technically grandfathered into the community. I paid dues, sure, but I didn't attend meetings and never cared much for their gossip. That all changed last month when Karen's son failed college again. For the third time, she threw a fit about how the world was unfair and how her son needed a win, and then without asking anyone, she announced in the HOA newsletter that the lake would now be a shared recreational site renamed after her son. She even hosted a surprise party at the lake, complete with banners, and invited the whole community, but not me. I only found out when I saw 20 strangers trespassing on my land, having a barbecue, and her son posing for photos next to my dock as if it belonged to him. I told everyone to leave immediately. Karen tried to argue, but I made it very clear the lake was private property and I had all the documents to prove it. She laughed, called me selfish, and said as a member of the HOA I was bound to share community resources. I calmly told her to leave, or I would call the sheriff, and she called my bluff. Or so she thought, because she called the cops on me, claiming I was threatening her son with a rake. What she didn't know was the deputy who showed up was my fishing buddy, and he took one look at my face and said, "Oh hey, you want me to arrest Karen for trespassing instead?" That was the first time her smile cracked, and it would not be the last after the cops left without arresting me. Karen stormed off in a fury, her son whining behind her that his party was ruined. I thought that would be the end of it, but I underestimated how petty and entitled she really was. The very next day I received a violation notice from the HOA, claiming I had failed to register my lake as a community feature and was in breach of the HOA's environmental beautification clause. Whatever that meant, the letter threatened daily fines if I didn't allow access to the public within 2 hours. I almost laughed, but decided to attend the next HOA meeting instead for the first time in years. When I walked into the community hall, every board member froze. Even Karen tried to keep her cool, but I could see her tapping her fake nails on the table like a metronome. I brought all the deeds, maps, and records, proving that the lake was mine and outside the scope of HOA jurisdiction. But before I could speak, Karen launched into a speech about community unity and how private landowners needed to support youth wellness programs, and her son, apparently, was the face of it all. She finished her speech with a dramatic gesture, saying she hoped the board would vote to seize the lake for recreational development. What she did not know was that months earlier the board had quietly voted me in as financial director after the last one moved to Florida. Nobody paid attention because I rarely attended meetings and never made a fuss, but every board check, every park maintenance fee, every upgrade request, every HOA employee paycheck had to be signed by me, and I had quietly earned the trust of the board because, unlike Karen, I never tried to manipulate anyone. I let her talk for a few minutes, then stood up and calmly reminded everyone that her plan would not only violate property laws, but would also cost money. money that I controlled. I pulled out a folder and handed it. To each board member inside was a detailed report showing exactly where HO funds were being allocated, and how recent petty events like Karen's son's lake party had already cost the HO over $2,000 in cleanup, overtime security, and extra trash pickups. Karen's face turned pale. She tried to interrupt, but I wasn't finished, I informed. The board that effective immediately, all non-essential spending, was frozen pending an audit, including funds allocated for Karen's pet projects. Like the community garden, which was really just her personal rosebush collection, and that the HO party. Budget was officially zero until further notice. The silence in that room was beautiful. Karen stormed out again, but this time she knew she had picked the wrong enemy. 3 days after the meeting, Karen must have realized her little stunt had backfired. Because she suddenly started acting like the victim, she posted on the community app that I was hoarding, planned, and blocking opportunities for neighborhood youth. Then she had the nerve to organize a protest right outside the ranch gates. 12 people showed up, mostly her friends, holding signs and chanting, "Give the lake back to the people." It was ridiculous. I stood there with a cup of coffee watching them embarrass themselves, then turned on the sprinklers to water the grass. Just so happened to soak half of them. Karen screamed that she would file harassment charges, but no one took her seriously, especially when my security cameras showed the protesters tearing up the lawn and leaving trash behind. 2 more complaints later, the city fined her for public disturbance and improper event permits. But Karen wasn't done. She tried to sneak her son onto the lake at night, probably hoping I wouldn't notice, but my motion lights caught him climbing over the fence and the alarm went off, scaring him into the water. He slipped, twisted his ankle, and had to be pulled out by emergency responders, and Karen blamed me, claiming the fence was too sharp and the lights was too aggressive again. I pulled out the documents showing installations and reminded her trespassing was still illegal even at night. Then I filed a formal complaint to the board, attaching video footage of her son vandalizing the gate and breaking a lock. The board had no choice but to suspend her from her HO duties pending investigation, and without her voice at meetings. Her influence collapsed. I quietly reinstated all frozen funds except the ones tied to her name and redirected money to repair the actual park upgrade. The public wanted a dog park and fitness trail that got built within weeks, and everyone praised the HO for finally listening the entire time. Karen stayed quiet. Maybe she was planning her next move. Maybe she realized she was finally losing control, but I wasn't done yet, because while she spent all her energy trying to take my lake, I had been digging into something else. Something she never thought anyone would find: her financial records and the HO expense reports she had access to before I took over. What I found would turn the entire neighborhood against her forever. I spent the next few nights going line by line through the HO transaction history. And what I discovered was a trail of unauthorized expenses, all connected to Karen. Over the past year, she had reimbursed herself thousands of dollars for fake event supplies that were never purchased and maintenance jobs that never happened. She even billed the HO for a so-called community improvement seminar in Florida that just happened. To align with her family vacation dates, I printed everything out, highlighted each suspicious entry, and included timestamps and vendor contacts. Then I requested an emergency board meeting under the clause of financial misconduct. It was the first time in HO history that the room was packed to the doors. People had heard whispers, and now they were ready for answers. Karen showed up trying to act unbothered, wearing a bright red blazer like she was attending a fashion show instead of a disciplinary hearing. But when I placed the folder in front of each board member, the color drained from her face. I walked them through every entry with proof of fabrication, then played an audio clip from a local landscaper who admitted Karen asked him to forge an invoice for tree trimming that never happened. When the board asked Karen to explain, she fumbled, stammered, and finally said it was a misunderstanding, that her assistant must have made the errors. Problem was she had no assistant, and we all knew it. The board voted unanimously to remove her from all positions pending a full investigation and banned her from submitting any future proposals. When word spread through the neighborhood, it was like a switch flipped. People who once defended her stopped talking to her. Her friends deleted posts and group chats suddenly dried up. Her son started parking his car blocks away from the house just to avoid getting it egged. Even the local coffee shop refused to serve her after she screamed at a barista about the temperature of her latte. With her influence, Gone, I sent one final message to the board, reminding them that power and trust were not privileges to be abused. They thanked me privately and publicly, and even held a small appreciation event at the newly opened dog park, but the best part came later when Karen received an official letter from the HOH demanding repayment of over $9,000 or face legal action, and just like that, the woman who tried to steal my lake now owed the community more than she could ever pay back. The fallout was delicious. Karen stopped showing her face at meetings. Stopped walking around the neighborhood with that smug look she always wore. And worst of all for her, she lost the one thing she treasured more than control: attention. People stopped caring about her opinions, her suggestions were ignored, her name became a warning, not a badge of honor. Meanwhile, I made quiet improvements around the ranch, added more trees around the lake, installed solar lights, and even opened it one day a month for charity events, something that earned respect from the entire board without giving up a single inch of ownership. Karen's son tried to act like nothing happened, but he ended up transferring schools after the video of him falling into the lake during his failed sneak-in attempt went viral. Someone uploaded it to a neighborhood group with the title "Prince of the Pond Takes a Royal Swim," and the comments were brutal. Karen tried to redeem herself with a community cleanup event, but only 2 people showed up, and one of them left after 10 minutes, claiming she was just there for the free donuts that never arrived. Eventually, Karen listed her house for sale, and within weeks a moving truck was parked in her driveway. The day she left, she didn't wave, she didn't look back, she just got in her car and drove away like the neighborhood had betrayed her. But in truth, she betrayed herself by thinking the rules didn't apply to her and underestimating the people around her, especially me. I still run the whole budget quietly and fairly. No drama, no hidden agendas, just accountability and respect. And whenever someone asks about the lake, I smile and say it's a gift from nature, not a prize to be gifted at someone else's party. What Karen never understood is that true power doesn't come from shouting the loudest or throwing the biggest tantrums. It comes from knowing when to stay quiet and when to strike with facts and patience. And as for the lake, it's still mine, peaceful, beautiful, and untouched by entitled hands. And every time I sit by the water with a cup of coffee and watch the ducks swim, I remember how one selfish woman tried to take it all away and ended up losing everything instead. Because when you play games with someone who signs your checks, you better know the rules, or you'll end up like Karen, swimming in regret and sinking in silence.